Okay.
Welcome to the November 14th edition of Bar Talk. This is the second to last Bar Talk of the year, but the final Bar Talk in our Attorney Wellbeing series. So very excited to have our well-being our well-being continuing, but hopefully it will continue after we finish with this one. Some updates. First of all, renew your dues today. We're in the midst of our renewal for our members, so please renew your dues. Save the dates. Next Thursday, a week from today in Augusta, is our legal year in review. The Winter Bar Conference is on January 22nd through 24th at the Westin in Portland. And the next Bar Talk will be on December 10th, 2024, which will be a wrap-up of this year and an introduction of our 2025 leadership. I'm going to hand it over to Angela Armstrong to talk about our benefit highlight of the month.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us. Nice to have you all here. So today I'm going to talk very briefly about ALPS Insurance. ALPS is primarily a legal malpractice insurance company that is endorsed by the Maine State Bar Association. And I highly suggest that you go to our website, which is linked in this slide when this is posted to our website, and look at them for giving you a quote. They have a lot of tools that can help you answer what type of insurance you may need, but it's not, they don't just do malpractice insurance. They can help you with cyber liability. They've now recently added a business owner's policy. They can help with workers' comp, general liability, crime insurance, directors and officers liability insurance. So they have a lot of options, and they've been a great partner of the MSBA for many years now, and they help. They also serve as a corporate patron of ours, which helps us with bringing programs to you and also keeping dues at a lower rate. So please check out ALPS today. And I'm going to turn it back to Jonathan so he can introduce our guest speaker.
Yes, ALPS is actually, it is a great partner, and their new offerings are definitely helpful to smaller and solo practitioners because they can now, have a pretty much a one-stop shop for their insurance needs. And, I'm not, I don't mean to sound like an advertisement for them, but I do think it is a really great addition that they've done to their offerings. And now, without further ado, the fifth or sixth or maybe even seventh in our series of attorney well-being topics for Bar Talk this year, I'd like to welcome Marcia Levy from MaineLaw School to talk to us about occupational and intellectual well-being. So, Marcia, take it away.
Okay, thank you very much. It's good to see everyone, although I don't see everyone, but I see your names at least. And I hope I'll get to see you soon. My name is Marcia Levy, and I am the visiting professor and director of externships and pro bono at MaineLaw School. I've been there it's been about a year and a half since I've been working with the law school, having come from a background in public and federal criminal defense and prisoners' rights work and teaching at other law schools. I'm going to actually go back to my background soon, but what I thought I would do is I'm going to share some slides because I thought the way that I would do this, although the topic is occupational and intellectual well-being, I think that really fits within the overall concept of professional identity formation, which is something that has really become a big deal in law schools right now because the ABA actually requires us to teach this. So what I'll do is I'll share my screen and kind of go back and forth from the screen and some of the things that I'd like to say that I think fit within occupational and intellectual well-being, but also ask that if any point anyone has a question or wants to stop me, please use the, I guess, the raising the hands button, because that'll be the easiest way. When the slides are up, it's often hard to see, what's happening in the room because you don't get to see the whole room. So let's see if I can do this well and share it and ask, is everybody seeing the slide just the way we want to see it? Okay, terrific. So we tried that out before and I'm glad it works. So this is called Tools for Professional Identity Formation, Growth Mindset, Reflection, and Mentoring Relationships. And what we mean by professional identity formation is really comes out of an ABA standard, Standard 303. The law schools are very heavily regulated by the ABA, as people might know. And so this is the definition they come up with, which I think is really a good one. It's that it focuses on what it means to be a lawyer and the special obligations we have to our clients in society. And it really talks about, and I'll let you take a second to read it here, that we explore values and guiding principles considered foundational to our successful practice. And this requires reflection and growth over time. And that's really critical. I deal with law students a lot, and they're in externships, and for many of them, that's really the start of their entry into the profession. And realizing it is just the start. And at the start, you're going to have certain values, views, skills, and experience that are going to change as you get more values, views, skills, and experience over time. And so what is it? And it relies on the professional identifying the competencies that you need to improve and how to do that. And the goals are to be competent. And of course, the model rules require that we have competency when we practice, that we be ethical. But I think one of the things that your program over the last, several months has gone to is really the idea of being fulfilled. And that is so key and sometimes not so easy to achieve. And we'll talk about things that can be barriers to achieving it and things that can really help us along the way. Understanding that how we obtain those goals is developmental, so it happens over time, and it's deliberate and intentional. And I'm going to use this image to talk about my career. And I actually do not have shoes that look like this, because if I ever did, I would definitely be in the hospital with at least a sprained ankle, if not something worse, especially with the cobblestone streets of downtown Portland. But here's what it means to me. And now I'm going to tell the story of my professional identity growth from the time that I exited law school in Portland, Oregon, not Portland, Maine, where I went to school, and I became a public defender. And at the time that I practiced in Portland, Oregon, with my very prominent Brooklyn accent, I felt like I needed a way to kind of blend and to be accepted when I stood up before a jury and I tried to convince them, to vote in my direction. So I wore cowboy boots. Those were my shoes. They were cowboy boots. And they were my attempt to be a part of the Oregon scene, because I have to tell you honestly, at that point in time, there were a lot of cowboy boots. And so I would go into court and I had my, my look and I had my voice. And the two probably didn't go together so well. But the point is that I was trying to develop myself as a lawyer, but a lawyer in a certain community in which certain values might be considered more important than others, and trying to understand the climate that existed at that point. But of course, I was a new lawyer. I then moved back to New York, and I did not leave my cowboy boots behind, but I might as well have, because certainly at that point in time, they weren't being worn in New York. But I went on to be a public defender and then a federal public defender and a prisoner's rights lawyer doing class action lawsuits on behalf of prisoners. And I remember that at that time, the skills that I was learning, now I went from state to federal court, and the courtrooms were very different. The atmosphere was very different. The expectations, quite frankly, were very different than they were in a state court, particularly doing a lot of misdemeanor type cases. And the shoes were different. And at that point, I was a poor public defender. The salary wasn't great. And so I had one pair of shoes, and they were black. I figured they fit with everything. But the point is that I kept taking on new skills and new experiences, and my view of myself as a lawyer really changed when I moved from state to federal court, and my cases got more complex, and my understanding of how to practice got more complex. The stress was the same, whether state or federal court. It was just a little bit different. And along the way, taking on new skills and new shoes. And to continue this, I'll just go to one more place that I went. And that was that I created the job of pro bono counsel at a major law firm in New York. And the law firm, I don't know if people know the law firms, it's Sullivan and Cromwell. And it's a firm with about 1,200 lawyers in several states, but the main office is in New York and several other countries as well. And I had never been in a private firm before. And I had been a public defender. That's really what I had done. And I got the job really because I had done the training for the firm. I did their trial advocacy training, and they liked what I did. And when I made this proposal, they liked the proposal, and they offered me the opportunity to create the job. And I remember that the first day of the job, I went into the chair of the firm and I said, Raj, what would you like me to do? This position has never existed before. What's important to you? And he looked at me, and I felt like I was in a movie called The Graduate. And I don't know how many people know the movie The Graduate with Dustin Hoffman, but he graduates college and he's trying to figure out what to do. And somebody at a party says to him, plastics. And he has no idea what that means. Well, my graduate experience in front of Raj Cohn was for him to look at me and say, I said, what should I do in pro bono? And he said, transactional. And I shook my head and I went back to my office and I called a friend and I said, what's a transaction? Because having been a federal defender and a public defender, I had no clue, literally had no clue what he was talking about. But I had to develop the understanding of what the transactional side of our practice was in order to be able to train and prepare and get opportunities for lawyers, not just on the litigation side, but our transactional side, in order to do pro bono. And by the way, just to further the shoe analogy one more time, I got a lot more shoes when I worked at Sullivan and Cromwell. I also had a better paycheck than I had when I was in public service practice. And in fact, the funny PS is that 4 years later, I went back to public service, which is really where my heart was at. And I became in the rest of my career, became an executive director of 2 legal service organizations, as well as a professor in law schools over these last several years. And my son likes to say about the experience now that he's in law school and seeing all the dynamics, that I was downwardly mobile when I left Sullivan Cromwell. And maybe I was, but for me, I was following my passion and I was following what I love to do. And although I love that job, and I've been fortunate, I've loved every job that I've had, I needed to move on to something that really enabled me to keep growing and enabled me to be able to keep involved and passionate about the law and continuing to develop my identity as a lawyer. So I want to talk about, just as learning goals, what I think it takes to develop ourselves in a way that provides occupational and intellectual well-being. And I'll talk about growth mindset and the issue of imposter syndrome, a 3-step process of reflecting that I think helps in order to think, where are you going next and how do you get there? And developing a relationship with mentors in order to continue to grow. So the first thing I'll talk about is growth mindset. And I don't know if people have heard this term versus fixed mindset. And you might not be surprised to learn that lawyers generally fall into the category of having fixed mindset. And sadly, really sadly, when you do the reading, students come into law school with a growth mindset. And by the time they leave, they actually have a fixed mindset, which is really not the way we should be going in law schools. So let me talk about fixed mindset first. So fixed mindset is when our intelligence is really static. We have a desire to look smart and therefore a tendency to avoid challenges, give up easily, see effort as fruitless or worse, ignore useful negative feedback, and feel threatened by the success of others. And as a result, we may plateau early and achieve less than our full potential and have a deterministic view of the world. You know, I think many, many years ago, I don't know if this is still talked about now, when I was raising my son, there was a lot of articles about, parents who always told their kids that everything they did was great. My son would be on the soccer field and he'd be deciding whether the socks went over the shin guards or under the shin guards while goals were being made on the field. And it really wasn't my job to tell him, you did a great job on the soccer field. But that's what parents were doing. And that leads to the sense of I can't fail. I can't fail because, I've always been told I'm great. I don't want to be told that I'm something less than that. Versus a growth mindset where intelligence can be developed and it leads to a desire to learn and therefore a tendency to embrace challenges and persist in the face of setbacks and see efforts as the path to mastery and to learn from criticism and to find lessons and inspiration in the success of others. And I really want to focus on this for the rest of the time that we talk together. And that is, how do we achieve that in the practice of law in order to be successful with ourselves intellectually and in terms of our resilience and in terms of our happiness? Because I think the well-being part of it is so much what you've been emphasizing. One thing is to overcome imposter syndrome, which many people feel. Certainly my students, if I'd ask them to raise their hands right now, every single one of them would. I'm not going to ask you to do that, but they would. And they feel it, and it becomes really an issue in externship supervision, because without giving supervision and feedback, students really feel like, I don't know how I'm doing. Is this the right way to go? And I think we often feel that as lawyers ourselves. And it's the feeling that we're not cut out for the work we're doing, in spite of anything to the contrary, the feeling that we're a fraud. And believe it or not, according to this journal, 70% of the population will experience this feeling at some time in their lives. So what can we do about it to feel this occupational and intellectual well-being? Some ways to overcome it is to open up to people you trust and go to them for support and a reality check. It's about having mentors, somebody who you can fess up to and say, today I was giving this lecture to the bar and I thought, do I know what I'm talking about when it comes to occupational and well-being and intellectual well-being? Identify what makes you qualified, not unqualified. When you're going into, whether it's court or you're meeting with a client, think about what makes you good. What makes you good at that? Even if during a particular session you walk away and say, I wish I had done something differently. Use a growth mindset. Remember that we all have to start somewhere and we all try and fail before we succeed. Embrace our successes. And this is one of the things that I think is so important, is really when we do well, whether we know it ourselves or somebody tells us, take that praise and don't, I've always had a tendency in life to push it away and say, yeah, but, and then give the thing that I did wrong. And it's really important to just say, yes, thank you. And to just breathe for a minute and think through, I did do that well, and I'm proud of myself. Embrace the successes and don't give up. When you feel you haven't done something right, figure out, how do I do it in a better way? What do I need to do? Whether I need to take a class or seminar, whether I need to meet with a mentor, whether I need to talk to a superior, whether I just need to take a breath or take a break and just readjust because maybe I've been working too hard and it's hard to see the good with all the stress. So knowing we only have a few minutes left, I want to just say there are three factors that can help you when you reflect on what's going on with you. They're the internal factors of self-awareness, the external factors of what others think, and the really external factors of society. And just to read them real quickly, include our own preferences, experiences, biases, and characteristics that shape our performance for good or for bad, and reflecting on how that's maybe impacted a decision we've made on a particular day. The external factors is, what do the people around us want, the societal, what does society expect, and how to balance all of those to do the best job that we can. And be reflective, because it increases our self-awareness and our capacity for perspective, taking compassion and empathy, and our emotional resilience and our connectedness and belonging. So just bringing us all back, you know, I told you the things that I've done, and if you've seen I saw my resume, other than 10 years that I spent teaching at Rutgers Law School, every job I've had for 3 years. Now, some people might think I've been fired every 3 years. The good news is it was a choice to make a move, and I'm always happy to share with anybody how I made the moves from being a federal and public defender to being a law school professor to being pro bono counsel at a big law firm to running a legal service nonprofit to going back into academia in a different role, to going back out in the field and running a nonprofit, and to coming back to academia. Because I love change. I feel like I have new skills to learn. I enjoy learning them. I enjoy partnering with others to learn them. And some people have called me a turnaround specialist. I like when I have skills that help a new organization to learn from what I've done before. But the key things I'm going to say, and that is the end of what I have to say, and then I'd love to hear if anyone has questions, is no matter what, find passion for the work that you do. You know, I love songs, and one of my songs that I sing to students, I don't know how much they love being sung to by me, is Love the One You're With. I don't know if people know it. Love the one you're with, right? And you have to love what you're doing. And some days you're going to hate what you're doing, but overall, you have to feel that's the place you need to be. And if it's not, you really need to think, why not? And are there other places that can get me there? And you understanding that it's lifelong learning, like how fun it is to be at this stage of my life and done all the things that I do, but being at Maine Law School with Mainers is a totally different experience. And I'm learning so much, and it's so exciting. And then every day, I really try to reflect on one good thing that I've done, one thing that I feel proud of. And it doesn't have to be about work. It could be something that, you know, I've done with friends. It could be a good walk with my dog. I would like to say it's pickleball, but I keep saying I'm going to take it up and haven't done it yet. But hopefully I will, and I'll be saying that as well. But find something that at the end of the day, no matter what the stresses are, no matter how you're feeling, that you feel good about. And go to sleep on that note, not on the note that's going to keep you awake or wake you up in the middle of the night. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Marcia. Are there any questions in the chat, Angela? Does anybody have any questions not in the chat? Well, in that case, everyone have a great day, and thank you again, Marcia. Thank you all for joining us today, and this will sum up the well-being efforts of this year, but I promise those will continue in the future. So thanks, everyone. Be well and have a good rest of your day.